Welcome back to the channel. It's Monday. It's time for Worst of the Week, and I haven't read an X-Men comic in a very long time, which is kind of weird. That's basically the reason that Doc and I are friends to this day, is because we discovered X-Men online, and, obviously he's a lifelong fan. I was getting into X-Men, and that's why we're friends and talking about this today. And we're going to do X-Men 23, Gerry Duggan, Josh Quisera. Welcome back to the X-Men, Doc. I know you took a break as well.
This is about the first X-Men I've read since I stopped buying new comics. 6-8 months ago? So I am completely kind of disconnected from the X books for the first time in 30 plus years.
Here's a tip, Doc. You didn't really miss anything. Now, the reason we're covering this, it wasn't something I was looking forward to. Somebody added me on social media with this picture of Cyclops talking to Emma Frost, and I was like, man, what a giant pussy. It's like, did they turn him into a giant pussy in this comic book? And it turns out Gerry Duggan is a soy-based life form, and he turned Cyclops into a mangina.
Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, that's about par for the course for anything that Gerry Duggan writes. He already tried writing Scott getting cucked by Logan to Jean. He's been playing up that, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean, Sammy on the moon for a little while now. So, well, I guess now they're doing it in their New York treehouse. Him making Cyclops look like a bitch seems about par for the course.
The good news is it's not just Cyclops. There's another male character that looks like a giant pussy in this comic book as well. Let's get into X-Men 23. Let's talk about the art first. Let's talk about the Josh Quisera art. When they announced that he was going to be the artist on X-Men after doing X-Force for several years, it seemed like an odd choice. He's got more of a horror-based vibe to his art style. He certainly cleaned things up a bit here, Doc, with his line work, but it still doesn't really fit like a traditional superhero team.
I'm not the biggest Joshua Quisera fan. I wasn't a huge fan of him when he was on X-Force. I kind of looked at him as a slightly more polished Igor Cordy. He's cleaned it up a good bit for this on X-Men, but it just feels like your run-of-the-mill 80s, 90s, 2000s fill-in artist that's on the book, and they're trying to make it look like he's a marquee artist. And I don't think he really fits that bill.
Yeah, it's almost like he's the Gerry Duggan of comic book artists. Like, why is this guy the main artist on X-Men?
At no point should he be considered marquee enough of a writer or an artist to be the headline penciler on the X line on the marquee X book. No.
The second most important comic book that Marvel puts out every single month.
Yeah, behind ASM.
Now let's talk about Cyclops. This was the page that was sent to me, and it's so embarrassing. It's got the bisexual lighting, and Joshua Quisera is at his worst when he has to do close-ups on faces without any action going on. Obviously, there's no action here. This is the conversation. Cyclops going up to Emma Frost, who somehow doesn't look sexy. It's just weird. He says, I got your message. I guess news travels fast. You heard Jean and I are taking some time. Apparently, they're on a break. She says, no, I had not heard you, gorgeous concupiscent clod. I'm not in the mood. I don't have the time, although I do appreciate your provocative attire. Oh, Scott, I asked you here because a tragedy has occurred. Worse than what I'm living now? And she says, I summoned you because before Krakoa, you were close to Miss Marvel. She was killed in New York. No, I'm going to assume that. This changes your calculus on previous conversations. Yes, of course. Emma, she has a secret identity and a family who... Don't worry, it's nothing I can't solve as Krakoa's premier janitor. And I'm sorry you and Jean are skidding. There's not enough love in the world. My favorite part is when he's notified that Miss Marvel is dead. Because he knew her when he was a kid, because he was like on the Champions or whatever. His like hands are on his knees and he's about to hurl, even though he never talks to her and they're not really friends now.
He has not spoken to her, I don't think, a single time since teen Cyclops got sent back to the past. I mean, granted, a 35-year-old man hanging out with a 15-year-old girl, probably kind of weird, even if there's time travel stuff involved. They were in Champions together for like 15 minutes. That was 30 years ago in his world, and he hasn't talked to her since.
He's about to hurl though because Miss Marvel died. Everyone apparently likes her, but they really just go out of their way to make him look like a complete bitch here. Obviously he's having problems with Jean Grey, so he's got to go to Emma Frost, who would be his, maybe booty call, but she can't even give him time because she knows that he's worthless now. I wish he got on his knees and begged for some petty sex, and then they could have made him more of a man, you know?
Yeah, the only thing that he could have done here to make himself look slightly less of a bitch is to be like, excuse me, ma'am, may I have a crumb of pussy? No, he just looks like such a sad sack. And honestly, throughout this entire comic, they just kind of sidelined or bitched out Scott Summers. And, you know, I'm not the biggest Scott Summers fan, but I really have liked him over probably up until recently, where they've just decided to make him such a bitch in the Krakoan era. He doesn't deserve this shit. He really doesn't.
He's not a cuck. He should be treated like one.
Yeah, exactly. He's the one that cheated on his wife with the hot blonde back in Morrison's era.
Well, he also left his kid and stuff. It's not like...
Yeah, I know.
He did when he was kind of more of a bad. Nowadays, he would never do that. I'll stay at home with the dogs if you just let me not leave.
Yes.
And it doesn't really get better throughout the rest of the comic book. He's basically subservient to all the female members on the team when they're fighting, too.
Oh, absolutely. He starts off this book by basically handing over the team lead to, what was it, Firestar? What the fuck is this shit? They're fighting somebody, and he's like, oh, nope. It's your turn to lead. I got to step aside again. Write him with some goddamn backbone.
Well, you got to get Gerry Duggan on the book. Like I said, he's a soy-based life form. Unless he's writing Conan, he has no balls.
He really doesn't. And every single male in almost every single book that Gerry Duggan writes, except for Conan, is a simpy bitch.
Absolutely. There's no doubt about it. He's not the only one in here, because one of the things that Gerry Duggan did when he first started as the X-Men writer that was somewhat interesting, he did introduce these 3 new villains, and I think it was Stasis, it was Fei Long, and there was another one. He was like a giant mushroom or something.
Yeah, something Jones.
Yeah, Cordyceps Jones. I think that's the name of the character.
Yeah.
So we get this one. We find out that Stasis is actually Mr. Sinister, because everything he does is revolved around Mr. Sinister. And we get this conversation between Sister Righteous and Mr. Sinister, and it's basically resolved by her punching him in the balls because he's such a bitch as well.
Not only that, but we also find out that Mother Righteous is actually just a clone of Nathan Essex's wife from back in the 1800s. But now you're not sure if maybe she's the one that was actually the...
Well, she's a geneticist too.
Yeah, she's a geneticist too. And maybe
Mr. Sinister can't have anything special about him.
Yeah, exactly. So she's the one, because she starts telling him, well, you're not the original either, to basically imply that she's the one that actually came up with the cloning technology and then cloned Nathan and made him Mr. Sinister. Because she takes off her mask for the first time. She always wears that like opera mask thing on her, like domino over her eyes. And now you see that she has a little heart in her
So we've
forehead.
seen diamonds, hearts, and clubs now. And we're just waiting for the spade.
Yeah, no, they're getting back into the whole suits of cards thing. It gets really, really tiresome after a while to try to keep track of who's who and what's what.
It's only been 2 years, Doc. You don't want another 2 years to uncover who Sinister really is?
No. In fact, the fact that there's more than one Sinister at all is absolutely stupid. It's just a waste of our time because they're all the same fucking character. And even whenever Dr. Stasis, who was kind of cool initially as like the crazy psycho scientist, the minute he took off the mask, he turned into mincing, flamboyant Sinister the same way that the X-Men's Sinister is. So what the fuck's the difference at this point?
Not only are there multiple Sinisters, but there's like multiple versions of Sinisters in each suit. But they're all the same character, so who gives a shit?
Because when they were different and they acted different, Stasis Sinister acted like a psycho crazy person. It was a good juxtaposition and kind of gave us the classic Sinister again. Whereas ever since Kieran Gillen got on Uncanny X-Men 10 years ago, we've had mincing, whiny, prancing Sinister. And that's all we're getting right now in the X books. But as soon as he took off the helmet, same character.
Yeah, absolutely enormous waste. The other big villain that he had introduced that had a lot of potential was Fei Long. Apparently, because Gerry Duggan's not only writing X-Men, he's writing Iron Man. Fei Long has taken over Stark Industries. Never seen that story before. And he's decided to take the Stark armor and turn them into Sentinels. Really big reveal there. And that's most of what the story is this giant Sentinel shows up. he accidentally sees a fireman and thinks it's a mutant, so he's going to kill it. And then the superheroes show up, and then Scott gets bitched out by the female members of the team.
We've seen all of this. Fei Long got turned into an Iron Man villain because Iron Man doesn't have any villains, and because Gerry Duggan needs to come up with something. And I guess he's an okay stand-in for the Mandarin because, they're both Asian, I guess. Now he's also one of the heads of Orcus with Nimrod. I mean, we got a page or two with Nimrod just saying, like, I'm going to destroy everything, but then not doing anything.
Leave the Omegas to me. I got him.
Yep, except for he didn't do anything. So, yay.
I remember when Jonathan Hickman was working with Nimrod, and it was actually cool.
Yeah. Remember when there was...
Farm remembers, Doc.
I know. When there was going to be Nimrod the Lesser, Nimrod the Greater, like 2 Nimrods. Which one even is this? Is this the one that was that scientist lady's husband that got put
This is the one that Gerry Duggan's going to bitch out to a female character within 2 issues.
Ah, okay. So every character, it's just Gerry Duggan. This comic was halfway nonsensical. It seems like it only existed really to, punk out a bunch of the other characters. They didn't really advance any plot.
No, they're just in a holding pattern for a Hellfire Gala.
Probably.
So they can get a new team. You would think we'd be working hard as hell to get through some stories before the team changes, but that's not what it's. The Hellfire Gala is just so stupid.
No, it's really dumb. The fact that they're even still doing this after the abysmal way that it's gone downhill for the last 2 years is just a testament to their own insanity.
I don't know, Doc. So you checked out X-Men. I finally brought you back to review X-Men 23. Are you sticking around this time?
No, nothing.
You're not recommending this comic book?
No, there's almost no.
I felt like you almost got there.
No, there's no plot progression, and all the characters just get turned into chumps. What the fuck would I read this for?
Cyclops, he's never Wolverine or anything like that, but he's never been a pussy like this. It feels so bad for the character, anyone that likes it. That was a terrible page. That's one of the worst pages of comics in the last year.
Yeah. Why don't you just put your hands on your knees and weep a little bit more, you weepy bitch?
If you hadn't read X-Men and you were unaware of this, I don't blame you. Really, Marvel Comics and Jordan White and Gerry Duggan have given you and I and Doc no other choice but to abandon the X-Men line because the comic books are so bad and they all lead to nothing exciting. If you haven't seen this video where we broke it all down, there's also a link in the video description.